We're going in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what up, everyone? Tay here. And today I want to talk more about what's going on with the plot of Avengers Doomsday, and specifically talk about what's going to happen with the whole Kang side of the story, and if the Council of Kangs will still somehow factor into what will be happening in the multiverse during Phase 6. Because after I dropped this video a few days ago, I saw some questions regarding how the plots of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars will change now that Doctor Doom will be the primary villain instead of Kang. Which, real quick on that note, some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about in this video will definitely kind of tie into what I talked about in that video, so if you missed that video, you should definitely check it out, because it's one of the very long, detailed videos that gets into all sorts of stuff on how Doctor Doom will become a god before we get to Avengers Secret Wars, and how that could connect to what happened in Deadpool and Wolverine, and what's going to happen with the Scarlet Witch, and also the Fantastic Four movie. But yeah, it was definitely a fun one, so check it out if you missed it. It's linked in the description. But because of what I talked about in that video regarding Doom, and how the Doom story will tie into what's happened with Loki and the TVA, that brought up some other questions from you guys that ties into Kang. So yeah, that's what I want to discuss in today's video. And don't forget to watch until the end of the video, because we do have several good Super Thanks questions to get to. And in fact, I'm actually going to jump into one of the Super Thanks questions right off the bat here in a second to start things off, and then we'll have several more at the end of the video. But anyways, let's get into it.
Without the TVA, everything burns.
And what are you so afraid of?
Me. If you think I'm evil, just wait till you meet my variants.
Alright, so one of the things that I discussed in the last video is the recent reports on the company production titles that the upcoming Avengers will use to film under. Because it was recently reported that the production title that Marvel Studios are going to use for Avengers Secret Wars is going to be Royale, and that the production title for Avengers Doomsday will be For All Time Always, which obviously seems to be a pretty big hint at Loki and the TVA, which would seem to confirm what we've heard in numerous past leaks, that both Loki and the TVA will play a very big role in the plot of Avengers 5. And like I mentioned a second ago, I actually wanted to start off this section of the video with one of the Super Thanks questions from the last video that kind of ties into all of this. And this question comes from SkiFreeX, and it says, isn't it possible that the For All Time Always LLC was the same production company that was originally created for the Kang Dynasty, and Marvel Studios just kept it after the retitle? Because I keep hearing speculation on what it means, but do we have any reason to believe this isn't just recycling? Alright, so first off, thank you very much for the Super Thanks question, SkiFreeX. And I wanted to start off with this because I thought that this was a very good question that ties into everything else we're going to talk about in this video, and what kind of changes we can expect for the story of Avengers 5 and Secret Wars now that Marvel Studios have pivoted to Doctor Doom. And until filming starts on Avengers Doomsday and we start to see some set photos and more concrete reporting come out, we can only really speculate on the plots of those movies based on the various information that's already come out in the past. But for several reasons, I think that many of the basic plot elements that Marvel Studios were planning on using for Avengers Kang Dynasty will still be some of the same basic plot elements that we will see in Avengers Doomsday. And the main reason that Marvel Studios can't stray away from those specific Avengers 5 story plans too much is because the basic plot for Avengers 6 is still going to be the same basic premise, because that movie is still going to be Avengers Secret Wars. And the whole premise for the Secret Wars story and what it takes to set up the Secret Wars story is very specific. So most likely, there were always going to be certain specific plot elements that were going to somehow be included in Avengers 5, no matter who the villain was. And some of those broad plot elements that I'm talking about that I think we will see in Avengers 5 include elements like the incursions, the multiversal war, and also the inclusion of Loki and the TVA playing important parts of the story that are necessary to set up what's going to happen in Avengers Secret Wars. And one of the reasons I think that some of those broader story elements that were planned for Avengers Kang Dynasty will still be used in the plot of Avengers Doomsday is because in both versions of the Secret Wars comics, both the original Secret Wars and the modern version of Secret Wars, Doctor Doom was the main villain. So if Marvel Studios' original plan was to do a Secret Wars movie where Kang was the main villain, then it seems pretty obvious to me that a lot of Kang's story in both Avengers Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars was probably going to adapt a lot of Doctor Doom's story from the Secret Wars comics, specifically the 2015 Secret Wars comic. So if the original plan was for a lot of Kang's story to adapt elements from Doctor Doom's story in the Secret Wars comics, then I would think it should be pretty easy for Marvel Studios to now slip Doctor Doom into the MCU as the main villain instead of Kang, and still keep those broad plot elements like the incursions and the multiversal war in place, because Doctor Doom was the character in the comics that they were kind of adapting a lot of these plot elements from in the first place, at least when it comes to Kang. Plus, something I've talked about in numerous past videos is how I've always thought that the Time Runs Out story would be one of the primary influences over the plot of Avengers 5. And I thought that when the movie was titled Avengers Kang Dynasty, and I still think that now that it's titled Avengers Doomsday. So yeah, going back to what started this with the Super Thanks question, and if the production title being For All Time Always was initially chosen when Kang was still the villain, I think it's kind of hard to know for sure because we know from past reports that Marvel Studios first started discussing the possibility of bringing Doctor Doom into the Multiverse saga around at least a year and a half ago after Ant-Man Quantumania flopped. And we also know that these LLCs were registered around this same time, a little while after Quantumania came out, and that not long after this is also when reports started coming out that Marvel Studios replaced Jeff Loveness with Michael Waldron as the main screenwriter for both Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars. However, that's actually changed as well because we now know that Marvel Studios and the Russo brothers have brought back Stephen McFeely to take another pass at the scripts for the Avengers films, but that based on these reports, the basic premise for these new scripts will still be based off of the storyline that was laid out in Michael Waldron's scripts. However, the bigger question I think this brings up is if Marvel Studios are truly done with Kang and the Council of Kangs for the upcoming Avengers films, or if the Kangs might still play some kind of role in those movies. Because as we all know, Marvel Studios have already focused a lot of time on setting up Kang and his different variants as being a very central part at everything that's going on in the Multiverse saga and how they were setting up the events for Avengers Secret Wars. So are Marvel Studios really going to throw all of that away and throw away the whole Kang story altogether? Or will some Kang variants still play some kind of smaller role in everything that's happening in Phase 6?
What a waste of time.
And as you may or may not know, my variants are already out there.
We'll find them.
There's too many.
I won't stop.
Doesn't matter.
Never stopped me before.
Alright, so shortly after Comic-Con happened, when Kevin Feige was doing press for Deadpool and Wolverine, he was actually directly asked in an interview if Marvel Studios were done with the Kang story, or if they were going to recast a version of Kang that might still be included in the upcoming Avengers films. And of course, Feige did Feige, where he basically just played coy about the whole thing and said that he basically couldn't answer that question. And that tells me that some version of Kang or Kangs is coming back, or that Feige doesn't yet know for sure if they'll bring the Kangs back in some way because Marvel Studios and the Russos and everyone are still working on the recent script, and he wants to leave the door open in case they do decide to. But I feel like if Marvel Studios were for sure done with Kang altogether, that he would have probably just said that so that fans can move on and look forward to Doctor Doom and not keep their hopes alive for Kang showing up in some way. And considering that he didn't say that and he instead played coy, I do think there's, at least a decent chance that some version of Kang will still somehow factor into Phase 6 and the plot of Avengers Doomsday. And the last time we heard any reference to Kang in the MCU was at the end of Loki Season 2, when Hunter B-15 told Mobius that the TVA were monitoring the activity of all Kang variants that they were aware of so that they would know if any of them started doing anything that would be a threat to the multiverse.
I got those reports on the variants of He Who Remains.
Do any of them know that we exist yet?
Oh, I guess one of them caused a little bit of a ruckus on 616 adjacent realm, but they handled it, so we're all good for now.
That's all we can ask for.
Now, if that scene is the last time we ever hear anything about the different Kangs in the MCU, then I guess that will suffice as a wrap-up to the whole Kang story. But it definitely would not be a satisfying or believable wrap-up to that story, and I think that Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios have to be aware of that. Because that big post-credit scene that we saw at the end of Quantumania that introduced the Council of Kangs was pretty huge, and the whole purpose of that scene was to reveal just how many variants of Kang still exist and what a huge threat they represent to the multiverse. And last year, after it was reported that the Kang Dynasty would no longer be the subtitle for Avengers 5, I actually put out a theory video where I discussed how what I thought Marvel Studios might do with the plot of Avengers 5 is that they would introduce Doctor Doom as the new main villain of the multiverse saga, but that the Council of Kangs would still be involved and play an important role in how Doctor Doom would end up becoming that new villain. And one of the things I talked about in that video is how in the multiverse saga, the Council of Kangs could potentially have a similar role to that of the Beyonders in Jonathan Hickman's Time Runs Out and Secret Wars story. Because in those comics, it was revealed that the Beyonders, who were these omnipotent multiversal beings, were actually the ones who were behind the incursions, which were causing these different universes to go to war across the multiverse. So the Beyonders were huge villains, and they were very important in how everything led up to the Secret Wars event. But they were still not the main villains of the Secret Wars story. The main villains of the Secret Wars story was Doctor Doom, and the Beyonders were just a big part in how everything led up to Doctor Doom becoming the main villain, and how everything led up to the Secret Wars event in general. And so I wonder if that might be how Marvel Studios will handle the Council of Kangs going forward throughout the rest of the multiverse saga. Because in Ant-Man Quantumania, Kang the Conqueror tells Janet that the reason he was trying to take over the multiverse is because he looked forward in time and saw how the Council of Kangs would end up causing, quote, countless incursions.
My variants throughout the multiverse. Playing with time, but I saw how it ends. I saw their chaos spreading across realities, universes colliding, endless incursions. I saw the multiverse, and it was dying. All because of them. All because of them.
So the way he saw it was that becoming the ruler of the multiverse was the only way to save it from the multiversal war and the incursions that would be caused by the Council of Kangs. So in Ant-Man Quantumania, it became pretty clear that Marvel Studios were foreshadowing the Council of Kangs to become the primary cause of the incursions and the multiversal war in Phase 6, which does seem very similar to what was happening with the Beyonders in the comics. So if Marvel Studios do have a plan to bring back the Council of Kangs for some kind of smaller role in Avengers Doomsday, I wonder if they'll actually be set up to be a sort of opposite to Doctor Doom. Because in the comics, in both the 1984 and the 2015 versions of Secret Wars, even though Doctor Doom eventually ended up becoming the main villain of those stories, initially Doom was not represented to be the main villain at all. Because in the 1984 Secret Wars, for the first half of the story, the Beyonder is represented as the main villain, and it's not until Doctor Doom steals the power cosmic from Galactus and uses it to battle the Beyonder that the story shifts to focus more on Doctor Doom as the larger villain. And it's very similar in Jonathan Hickman's Incursion saga, where initially the Beyonders are the ones who are set up as the main villains because it's revealed that they are the ones who caused the incursions and are the ones who are traveling the multiverse and destroying all of the big cosmic entities like the Celestials and the Living Tribunal. And it's not until the very end of the Incursion saga in the Time Runs Out story where Doctor Doom brings his master plan together and tricks the Beyonders and defeats them to steal their power, which he then uses to create Battleworld and become God Emperor Doom and the villain of the rest of the Secret Wars story going forward. And I bring this up because maybe this will be similar to how certain events will play out in Phase 6, where in order for Doctor Doom to become the main villain of the Multiverse saga, he will actually have to be the one to defeat who we thought the main villains were actually going to be with the Council of Kangs. And one of the things I talked about in the last video is how I thought that the deeper meaning behind Avengers 5 being titled Avengers Doomsday is actually going to be due to the incursions, and how the events of that movie could be about the last day of the MCU 616 universe, and when the incursions come to destroy it, making it literally the Doomsday for the MCU, or at least the MCU 616 universe. And something that was interesting that I thought was worth bringing up is when Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers revealed Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom at Comic-Con, they never actually referred to him as the new main villain of the Avengers films. What they actually said is that he was the most important character in order to do the Secret Wars story justice, and that he may actually be the most important character for the Marvel Universe overall.
As fans of the comic know, Secret Wars is incredibly ambitious. World-colliding epicness. All of this made Joe and I understand that we would need to make another essential movie first in order for all of us to be ready for Secret Wars.
There is one very, very important character that is required to do Secret Wars justice. And it's a character that Marvel has not introduced yet. And it could be the most important character in all of the Marvel Universe.
Now, when that presentation happened at Comic-Con, I really didn't read too much into how exactly the Russo brothers introduced Doctor Doom, because of course I was just all hyped up on the whole reveal in general. But looking back on it, it is kind of curious that Joe Russo made that comment about Doctor Doom potentially being the most important character in the Marvel Universe. Because, I mean, he hasn't even officially entered the MCU yet, so how could he be the most important character? Well, one possibility is he could be saying that because Robert Downey Jr. played Tony Stark. Which, if that is the case, then that seems like kind of a blatant hint at Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom actually being a Stark variant or somehow connected to Tony Stark. However, something else I thought of, and I might be reading too much into this, but maybe the reason they said that Doom might be the most important character in the MCU is because Doom will be the one who actually saves the MCU. I mean, maybe Doctor Doom won't technically be the main villain of Avengers Doomsday. Maybe the Council of Kangs will still be the main villains, and Doom will actually be the one who defeats them, which could then set up Doctor Doom to actually be the main villain in Avengers Secret Wars, very similar to what happened in the comics. Which, I mean, I know that might sound crazy considering that the movie is titled Avengers Doomsday, Which obviously I know that one of the main reasons that Marvel Studios chose Avengers Doomsday to be the title is because it confirms Doctor Doom as a big character in that movie. But if the underlying kind of larger meaning behind the Doomsday title is really a hint at the incursions, then it really wouldn't be all that crazy that part of the plot of the movie could revolve around Doctor Doom trying to help defeat the Council of Kangs and possibly even trying to help stop the incursions like he did in the comics, even though he was technically also responsible for a lot of incursions in the comics as well. And maybe we could even see Doctor Doom teaming up with the Avengers or the Fantastic Four or, just some of the heroes in general to try and stop the Council of Kangs. Because if you've read the comics, we've seen Doctor Doom team up with different heroes to face off against a larger villain or a larger threat many, many times. I mean, even at the very end of the Time Runs Out story, when Doctor Doom defeats the Beyonders, he's teamed up with Doctor Strange, who is trying to help him. And I mean, to be fair, at the end of the Time Runs Out story, it is Doctor Doom who is the one that's responsible for technically saving the multiverse by defeating the Beyonders and creating Battleworld. I mean, of course, he did do it for largely self-serving reasons, so that he could set himself up to be the ruler of Battleworld. But still, if it weren't for Doctor Doom, all that was left of the multiverse would have perished in that final incursion. So yeah, I guess my bigger point is in this video is that maybe the Council of Kangs will still be involved in the plot of Avengers 5 to some degree, and maybe Doctor Doom will act as somewhat of a hero in that movie and won't actually become the real main villain of the multiverse saga until we get to Avengers Secret Wars. Now, of course, I should say, just like I said at the end of the last two videos, this is just one of many theories I have about how the events of Avengers Doomsday could play out, but I do think that this would be the perfect way for Marvel Studios to set up Doctor Doom as the main villain of the multiverse saga while still staying true to everything that they've set up before up to this point with Kang and portraying the Council of Kangs as the biggest threat to the multiverse. Now, of course, if they did do this, this would mean that Marvel Studios would likely have to recast Kang with someone new. But with Doctor Doom being in the mix now, I do think that audiences wouldn't care as much about a recast near as much as they would have before when Kang was being set up as the primary antagonist of the saga. And something that's worth mentioning is in a recent interview that Jonathan Majors did with TMZ, he actually said that he would love to come back and play Kang if Marvel Studios would have him. If they changed their mind and invited him back, that he would do it in a heartbeat. And while I do think that Disney probably won't allow that to happen, but if they did reverse that, I must say that having Jonathan Majors play opposite of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom would be absolutely epic and would make for some incredible chemistry in those movies. So yeah, as always, we'll have to see how things play out, so please leave your own theories about all of this in the comments down below. Do you think the Kangs will somehow come back for Avengers Doomsday? And if so, how do you think that will happen? And do you even want the Kangs to come back, or would you just rather see Doctor Doom as the primary villain? So yeah, leave all your theories and opinions in the comments down below, but don't go anywhere just yet because we still have several more Super Thanks questions to get to. So let's get to those.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's jump into these Super Thanks questions, and I already covered one of them at the beginning of the video from SkiFreeX, so thank you very much again for that, SkiFreeX. And then, of course, we have a $5 one from Gator Chris. Thank you very much as always, Chris. And then we also have 5 from Blackfire Warrior that says, another hit Tay. And then the first one with a question we have is from Hohenzoller 3000. And this one says, could you imagine that Galactus and Alioth in the MCU are the same person/creature? They both come from outside time and space and are mainly known for consuming. Maybe Alioth has been a pruned Galactus who lost his armor. And then it ends with, thanks for the well thought through content, enjoying it very much here in Germany. All right, awesome, Germany, that's sweet, man. As far as your comment about Alioth perhaps being Galactus or, a version of Galactus, I do think that your logic on that makes sense because they are, kind of similar in what they do, but I highly doubt that's what Marvel Studios are going to do for the MCU, because in the comics they're two different entities, and I think it would just be a little bit overly convoluted, but I do get your point for sure. But yeah, thank you very much for that super thanks, Henzaler 3000, or however you say that. And then the last one we have is a rather long one from West Coast Avenger. And it says, love the channel, my favorite MCU YouTuber. This is a long one, but I think you'll pick up what I'm putting down. 616 Spider-Man should still be the anchor. RPK and Alex Perez have both given their scoops for Spider-Man 4. There's rumors that Spider-Man 4 and 5 may be filmed back-to-back. It makes the most sense for Spider-Man 4 to ramp up and take the November 2025 Blade spot, because as we know, the Blade movie has been taken off the slate. Spider-Man 5 should release after Doomsday, but before Secret Wars in the Void/Battle World. This way we get the grounded Spider-Man 4 to rebalance the character, which is sorely needed after No Way Home, and a multiversal symbiote cameo for Spider-Man 5. With RDJ as Doom, the impact is so strong having Peter front and center, but we need to know where he is in life after he's lost everything. It's doable. If filming for Spider-Man 4 starts in October 2024, it could release in November 2024. Every MCU Spider-Man film has taken 12 to 13 months from start of principal photography to release day. Okay, yeah, quite a long one, but I do pick up what you're putting down, West Coast Avenger. And yeah, I've heard the rumors about Spider-Man 4 and 5 filming back-to-back. I'm not sure if there's anything to that or not. It would definitely be a lot of Spider-Man filming for Tom Holland if that was the case, considering we know he will also be a big character in both Avengers movies. But what we've heard is that Spider-Man 4 is likely going to take the July 2026 spot, which would make it the next movie to come out after Avengers Doomsday, but before Avengers Secret Wars. So that would kind of put the kibosh on your whole thing about both Spider-Man 4 and 5 taking place in the Multiverse saga. But I don't think Marvel Studios were ever going to do that anyways. I think even if they do film them back-to-back, most likely what'll happen is Spider-Man 4 will have more multiversal elements so it can connect to the upcoming Avengers films, and then Spider-Man 5 will hopefully be the grounded kind of Kingpin, Daredevil-related Spider-Man movie that we all have been hoping for. So yeah, thank you very much for that super thanks, West Coast Avenger, and thank you to all the rest of you for those as well. I'm really digging getting more super thanks questions, tying into all the craziness with the Multiverse saga and the Avengers films, so please keep them coming. And remember that if you would like to leave a super thanks with a question or a comment on this video, that those really are greatly appreciated, and that I will read and respond to those in the next video. So yeah, with that, I think we can wrap it up. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and share it because that really helps out the channel a lot. And of course, subscribe if you are new here. And don't forget to check out the last video if you missed it. It is also a good one, at least in my humble opinion. And then lastly, definitely come follow the channel on Twitter so you can be updated about when videos are coming out or just talk to me about other nerdy stuff going on in the world of the MCU. So yeah, I think that covers it. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I will be back soon.